Welcome to Beyond Drama, Lessons from Representation in Entertainment. I'm Kay Biswas. I'm a critic. I've written for The New Statesman and The New York Times. I'm the editor of Representology, which is the Journal of Media and Diversity. I'm the chair of the wonderful charity HERD, and there are a number of HERD representatives here who you should all talk to. And also, I'm director of Resonance FM, which is the best radio station in the world, so give that a listen. I'm delighted to be joined by this superstar panel. At the end, we have Hassan Akkad, the filmmaker, photojournalist, and activist. We have Sarah Asante, the scripted commissioning editor at UK TV. We have Imran Hussain, the director of comms and external affairs at the Refugee Council. We have Hamid Ibrahim, who is the CEO of Kugali Media. And next to me, I have Ruby Qureshi, who is the entertainment commissioner at the BBC. I'm going to start with Hassan, because I feel that Hassan's tale is one that I think reflects on how the industry has changed since Hassan came to this country. Can you tell us about your first experiences of the entertainment industry in Britain?
Before I tell you, I lost like a 200 quid green Davidoff pen. If anyone, honestly, if anyone finds it, don't nick it. It's really dear to my heart. So please, yeah, don't nick my pen. Right, my experience of, yes. So how things have changed. So yes, so my story is that I experienced being on both sides of the camera. I came to this country in 2015, which feels like ages ago. I'm now a British citizen. Woohoo! And I was part of a documentary series called Exodus: Our Journey to Europe, which was made by BBC Two. And it was a film that followed the journeys of many people who were doing that crossing. Remember when we cared about people fleeing? So it was back then, so I was one of the people who so I filmed my whole journey on a GoPro from throughout Europe, and got to meet the filmmakers in Calais, actually, before one of my attempts to jump over the fence. And they told me, we're making this film, and we would like you to be part of it. And I said, well, I've got 6 hours of rushes, because I used to be a photographer back home, so I understand filmmaking. So they said, yeah, let's collaborate. So my first experience was terrible, because it was that. Because we didn't collaborate. They took my footage and never paid me or credited me, and they won every award. So it was not great, to put it mildly. And then I fell in love, because I used to be an English teacher back home in Damascus, and I didn't want to teach English to the English in England. So I wanted to work in filmmaking. So I started sussing it out, see what I could do. And someone talked about being in a pigeonhole. I was in a big fat pigeonhole, because everyone approached me if they want to make something about refugees. I was like, guys, I've got other ideas. And they were like, nah. So I ended up working in a falafel shop, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to pick this up again. So I started producing short films, no-budget short films, student films. And then I got to sort of make my way up, and I worked on the Netflix film The Swimmers as a producer. And then I was like, I need to do more. So I wrote and directed my short film last year, which I'm now developing as a feature at BBC. So I got to sort of see what it's like, and it's horrible. The industry is genuinely, listen, I'm very unfiltered because I'm ADHD. Everyone is full of shit in the industry. Genuinely, people talk about being nice and inclusive and all of that, they're lying. They care about their diversity quota. They're like, oh, Hassan is like refugee and Muslim, so great for the refugee quota. But when it comes to doing it, people don't put words into action, which is annoying. So that's my...
I mean, this is the kind of tone we want on this panel. We're going to be a fighty tone. Everyone's going to beef with each other. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
We're going to see at the end of this some clips from Hassan's work. But I'm going to first move on to Sarah. Sarah, now you've worked in the industry for a while. When you started out in the industry, how representative was television of wider society?
Well, first, just to address Hassan's very fair notes about people he meets in the industry, I'm very much an advocate of words into action. I am Ghanaian born, so I'm not first generation, I am generation. When I first came to the UK, I was about 3 or 4 years old. I loved TV from a very young age. There weren't many people that looked like me on screen, obviously, especially in British TV. And I very much gravitated towards American TV. Everything the Americans were doing, they understood. You put the rainbow on the screen, you don't gatekeep. So you had things like Cosby Show, you had things like, you know, Insecure, Atlanta. We have so many things that we can list that have come from there. And they've definitely inspired what we do over here. But I think we can tell uniquely British and uniquely representative stories in our own voice and in our own ways. So as I rose through the ranks from assistant to the ranks of commissioning editor, once I gained a decision-making role, I was able to weave into the stories that I tell the voices that I rarely get to hear. So whether that's voices with an accent, voices with an interesting background, voices from non-educated backgrounds, wherever possible, I am always on the lookout for that. And I've spent a lot of time in this industry looking at lots and lots of different schemes and different mentorships and shadowing and all of these kinds of things, but rarely do I see tangible end results or programs that have a good end game beyond you'll be able to get in a room with a commissioner. I think all commissioners should be opening their offices for people to get in the room with them anyway. That shouldn't be the prize at the end of a script a scheme or a directing scheme or things like that. So the slide that I have up is representative of a pilot scheme that I was in charge of when I first landed at UKTV, having left the BBC. I did lots of my best work at the BBC with shows like Famalam and shows like Dreaming Whilst Black that really kind of spoke to black audiences and wider audiences. I loved Famalam, for example. We had the warring aunties. Every time they go to a garden party or church, they turn up with competing levels of Tupperware. And on the internet, when we released those clips, the standalone clips, we'd get the whole gamut of the world saying, oh my God, why is this my Jewish aunties? Why is this my Italian aunties? This is so my Indian aunties. So we loved that we could tell these jokes through an African or Caribbean perspective that still resonated wider and broader. And I knew that jokes could do that. And I know that comedy can do that. And certainly with these 4 projects that I looked after in 2022, we were able to do some really interesting things, like a network first of having a all-disabled cast written by a writer with cerebral palsy on network TV. We were able to tell the story of the girl with the afro in the corner, which was about young people making horrible decisions because their parents had immigration and legal issues and things like that. So these are topics that are, you know, very close to my heart, but still entertaining, still resonant, still broad, and invite other people in to look at perspectives and points of view that are beyond their own. And that, I think, is really important as a commissioner, because I didn't see that growing up.
I mean, that's great. And do we have a clip that we would like to show?
I don't think I brought a clip.
For Sarah?
No, I don't have one.
Oh,
no.
right.
We couldn't get it to work, sorry.
So I'll move on to Imran. So Imran, how does your work in helping refugee and migration stories lead to a change in public attitudes?
Thanks, Biz. I mean, my charity, Refugee Council, we provide services for people going through the asylum system and for services for people who at the end of it, who have kind of recognised as refugees. And those services and all the kind of policy work that we do trying to influence government, for us to get anywhere with that, we've got to have public will. And that public will is also what drives political change as well. So we've got to do it. How do we improve where we are? I suppose the first thing to say is there is still lots of support out there. You may not always pick that up, but there's lots of support out there from the public and sympathy for the position of refugees. But to improve things, to build public support, we've got to target the persuadables. Our analysis is about 50% of the public are in the middle. So you've got activists who are with us, and on the other side, you've got people who are just like implacably against us. There's 50% in different kind of groups who are open to persuasion, and that's what we're trying to target. How do we target those people? To get to people's attitudes, you've got to work on their values, and to get to their values, the best way of doing that is stories. It's really hard to talk about refugee issues in a kind of sympathetic way on the news, because the way politics frames it, it's really hard to have a positive story, if you like, without a bodyguard of like with the current debate, which kind of distorts things. So that's what we're trying to do. I suppose the other thing to say is just the power of storytelling. I mean, when you and I, Biz and I used to work together a long time ago at Child Poverty Action Group, but when you and I worked there, if people remember, Benefit Street, the programme came out, and that was reality TV, and that just got me thinking at the time how much, there was so much more truth in a drama like Cathy Come Home than there was in that kind of reality TV. And so that always made me just really aware of the power of storytelling, of drama. And now, obviously, we're experts on refugees and the asylum system. We're not experts on TV production and editing. Although I do edit my son's GoPro from his football matches.
Imran makes such a good point there. I mean, we're told that kind of refugee and migration stories are a kind of minority issue. Like, Hollywood was built by migrants. It popularized the idea of the migration parable. And, whilst people have argued that it's lost its way, there is a genuine interest in, I suppose, the marginalized in society, be it children living below the poverty line or people making small boat crossings, I'm going to move on to Hamid.
So just one thing on that.
Yeah,
So the refugee experience, what is it, apart from human drama? Like, it's about ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. They're fleeing persecution. The journey to get here is hazardous, deadly. When they get here, they've got a massive bureaucracy who's against them. And then if they get through all that, it's about rebuilding their lives. All of that is just laced with human drama. So the opportunities to tell stories are just so strong.
Absolutely. And I want to go behind the camera now and address Hamid. I mean, how does a small African-led animation company end up working with like a big player like Disney?
Can you all hear me well, by the way? Cool. So it's been a very interesting journey. First of all, the company is really young, and what we did, nobody expected. So not only did we work with Disney, it was in the sense we made history with Disney. We became the first company in history to collaborate with Disney Animation to create an original animation. It's been around for 100 years. And all the founders are from Africa. The story is an African story. So we did a few firsts there. And how that happened was the philosophy we had from the beginning when we started the company. So Kugali was built because all of us felt like there has to be amazing African stories out there. That was the first thought. And then I can even go with this room right now. If I ask everybody, how many African stories do you know? At most, you get like 2. They'll probably tell you Black Panther, which is wrong. And then you get something along the lines of Kirikou, or you get Shaka Zulu. Like that. That's pretty much it, right? And it's a continent of billions of people with some of the most diverse cultures. And that didn't make sense to me at all, right? And just as a business opportunity as well, Africa is developing so quickly right now. That's why I see a lot of streamers and people trying to dive into that area. So we almost came in a really good cross-section where we were already telling the authentic stories. Our company is very diverse on the continent itself. We have people from all over Africa. And in that, we're trying to tell those stories gently. So one of the interviews we did, which was with BBC, and she just wanted to talk. And from that conversation, we kind of pitched her the story, and things kept growing and getting bigger and bigger. And I would say she saw the importance of what we're trying to do. Because if you think about stories, and even just my experience right now, because we just launched the show a few months ago, and one thing I've seen, there needs to be a general re-education about Africa, both in the continent and outside it. And one thing I noticed is people don't like to be lectured to. People who like being lectured to like to lecture. That's what I noticed. And then everybody else will watch a good story. Every single person likes a good story. And the impact I've seen Iwaju make actually humbled me, because I didn't expect it to be that big. So now we are coming with that confidence of, hey, we say this and this would happen if you do a high quality story. And we're seeing the results of that. So everything we're doing from Nakugali, we have that sense of confidence and responsibility in re-educating people about what Africa actually is and doing it in a way which people like to receive messages.
I'm a big believer in the idea of like creativity crossing borders in a way that bodies can't. And it's like, I think Hamid's story is a perfect example of how this can take place. Why is Downton Abbey really popular in Finland? Why do the Latvians absolutely love Call the Midwife? Why in Chile was the most popular boy's name the lead character of a Turkish soap in 2020? It's very, very possible to kind of cross borders at a time of growing kind of nationalism through creativity.
Can I give a quick
of course.
The gentleman helping me film there. It's okay, you've done an amazing job. I think you can stop now. I feel sorry for your hands. Thank you very much.
I'm going to end the first question round with Ruby. And Ruby, in your work commissioning at the BBC, how do you find yourself supporting and attracting diverse talent?
That's a very big question, but I will try and do it succinctly. I'm still trying to think about why Downton Abbey is so popular, but never mind. Firstly, just want to say to Sarah, if you haven't seen Family Lamb, if you haven't seen Dreaming Whilst Black, it's amazing. And it addresses something that Hassan was bringing up. And really, we're just trying to tell these stories from an entertainment perspective. All I want at the end of that line, very long, difficult commissioning line, is to have a story that feels authentic, has representation on screen, diverse representation and authentic storytelling. And we can still do that in entertainment, but sometimes it takes us a while to get there. So my sort of most relevant commission at the moment to this discussion is Drag Race UK. And it has reached so many people in so many ways. And there isn't a day where someone sends me a letter or sends me, grabs me in the corner and tells me how it saved their lives. And sometimes that's a grandma telling me how she now understands her child. If anyone's watched it, you'll know. It's rude, it's bawdy, it's ridiculously funny. And then in this 1 hour telling of the story, there is always an individual who has an experience, and it's their experience that they're telling, which feels way more authentic than a factual piece or a broadsheet article, and it's got way more reach. One of our biggest storylines was someone talking about a queen called Ginny Lemon, talking about her non-binary status with another queen called Bimini Bombulash. They have fantastic names. And that short clip has probably had something like 20 million views. And people have talked about that clip, written about that clip, and for me, that's success in diverse storytelling. But to take it all back, that requires a diverse production team, diverse presentation, a production team that understands how to tell those stories in a sensitive way, off-screen mentoring, and then the commissioning process of that. Lots of people are a bit like, oh, well, it's a no-brainer. It took me forever to get that series on screen because it's a risk. It's a risk for so many ways. And there's now a whole underserved audience who benefit from it, but that was really tricky. Anyway, there's more to say. But I want to show you this clip, which is just out of our department, which is a similar tough commission, but when it's a 1-hour film. It's a chat show, a very unique chat show called The Assembly, and the chat show hosts are all autistic. Here's the clip.
Welcome to The Assembly, our collective of autistic, neurodivergent, and learning disabled interviewers. We are delighted to have you join us today. Our rules are no subject in out of bounds, no question in off the table, and all might happen. Please tell us who you are.
That was brilliant and terrifying.
Can I just say quickly, off the back of that, he was asked what it's like to date, to be married to someone who's only 5 years older than his daughter. And also, because he's faced rejection as an actor, how can he cope? What lessons does he have for the autistic community who face rejection every day? And, you know, it's such a heartwarming story. It's generated so much interest, and that's really what we just need to do, is break through.
I mean, that's such a good example. The people who took a what would have been seen internally as a risk on The Assembly produced some, like, wonderful content. And, I mean, Sarah, you must have had that word risk put in front of a number of your shows that you've worked on. I mean, how do you ensure that audiences can see themselves reflected in commissions, and you're almost like the representative of audiences to those internal meetings that you have?
Yeah, I think that it's incumbent on anyone who's in a decision-making position to use all the tools at their disposal. You know, we can't all just be reading The Guardian. We can't all just be agreeing on the same politics and things like that. We definitely have departments within every broadcaster that tells you who the audience is, where they are, how much they're watching, how little they're watching, what turned them on, what turned them off. You need to digest that kind of stuff. I'm a massive data geek and behavioral science geek, so that stuff interests me naturally anyway. And I use that knowledge to understand the commercial imperatives of the broadcaster, but then it all has to come through the prism of who I see missing. So if I look left and I look right, and there's a ton of shows that speak to a certain audience, you know, some channels really super serve one type of audience and it's really obvious to see who they're talking to, then I think, right, what's missing? Do we have enough Northern voices on this slate? Do we have enough working class stories on this slate? Do we have enough of any of this kind of stuff? And scripted is tough because we can't prescribe. We can't say, hey, give me a gay lesbian story from Scotland so that it can tick all boxes, because that's not authentic. However, should the gay lesbian story from Scotland turn up, that's going to make my ears prick up, and that's going to absolutely end up on my reading list, because I want to see, you know, is this a story that's going to resonate? Is this coming from a true place? Is this going to delight audiences? So whenever you wear those two hats, I know who my audience is, I know what they like and what has turned them off in the past. I also know, because I'm a massive telly geek, what's missing from our screens. How can I bring those two things together? That story we haven't seen, that voice we haven't heard from, that perspective that we don't often see, like autistic questioners. So yeah, it's you have to take that responsibility very seriously and look in the most genuine corners of the program writing world on who is missing, whose story haven't we heard from.
Sarah's answer there reminds me of a story on the founding of Channel 4 in 1982. Channel 4 kind of announced itself very loudly. It commissioned radical stories from black theatrical groups and minority sexualities and things. And the first commissioner, Jeremy Isaacs, meets the Conservative Party chairman, Norman Tebbit, at a party. And Norman Tebbit is livid. Jeremy Isaacs said to him, I thought you wanted minority culture reflected. And Norman Tebbit says, by minority culture, I meant golfing, sailing, fishing, not black people and homosexuals. So, you know.
And Channel 4 was the first place I worked in TV. For a reason.
Did you feel that there was like a radicalism that you were allowed to kind of instill in your commissioning process there?
I started off as an assistant at Channel 4, and I think they more recently started using the banner Born Risky. I'd argue they were then, maybe not so much now. I feel like there's a lot of sort of renovations of homes that no one can afford, with gardens that no one can afford at the moment. But then it definitely was the kind of the hot, cool new kid on the block with programs like The Word and Eurotrash and things like that you know, us youngsters used to like to tune into.
I want to get into the nuts and bolts of the sort of production process and talk to Imran about how organisations like the Refugee Council, which produce research and develop case stories, at what stage do you want to be involved in the storytelling? Because there'll be people in this room who will not really know how to interact with NGOs like yours.
Yeah, I actually caught a bit of the previous panel, and it's I think the same answer, which is, you know, for the best collaboration, it's coming early as you can. Talk about it. We may be able to give you leads or you know, or even kind of shape your thinking. And then as you go through the process, then there are, you know, perhaps there's people in the sector that we can introduce you to, and of course, if you want to meet people with actual lived experience, we can do that. You know, as well as just checking facts and figures and things like that, which we've always done. And so, yeah, I mean, the collaboration, I think for us, we kind of feel it works better if it's earlier. We have more invested in it. We can put more effort into it, if you like, more, you know, get the planning right for it. And it may well be that there are, you know, things that we've done in the past where the collaboration has continued in terms of the marketing of the film as well. So earlier the better, and you know, and don't be scared of refugee charities. Like, you know, not all of us are going to be like super like worthy and dull. Like, you know, we understand that we're not experts in filmmaking. We know, and we totally get that entertainment has to come first, and that's the best way of reaching people. So you know, I think programs like Silent Witness do that really well. They tell the story, you know, the thriller bit, the jeopardy and the thrill bit of it, and as they do that, they also give you introduce you to maybe issues or groups of people that you know who are normally less well represented, and I think that's an incredibly effective way of doing things. And it's, you know, political climate is just quite tough, you know, so audiences don't want to have worthy stuff shoved down their throat. Senior execs would be worried about producing wokery. So, you know, these are all things I think that are out there, but, you know, essentially it's about storytelling, and I think the appetite for that is really strong.
And Hamid, I mean, what can the industry do better to ensure that it's supporting diverse talent behind the screen? You know, the backroom team.
Oh my God.
Well, here's your chance to ask him. So, yeah.
All right. So it's a very interesting question. Similar experience as him, where the industry is very, it doesn't make sense. There are individuals who make sense, who are good, but the industry itself, if I'm being completely honest, when I was younger, I used to wonder where there would be a lot of people in Hollywood who would break down. I know why. It makes sense now, kind of thing. So industry is very, it's a jungle where the rules don't do what they're supposed to do, right? So you're dealing with a lot of individuals who are great versus dealing with a functioning system. And I don't know, if I knew how to fix it, I would say that my company would do it, first of all. There would be a lot of money there. But in terms of the simplest things would be, I think it's been mentioned over and over again in this talk, even in the talks before, authenticity and going with truth. Because often I see the industry trying to almost engineer a moment, and they'll be like, and they use data. And data cannot tell you about the future, and it's not very creative. So, because they put a lot of money into this film, so they have to make money. So like, oh, those films made money, let's do one like that. And that's not how it tends to work, right? So the only thing I would say is if the industry could almost remove itself from trying to replicate the past to try and to imagine a better future, that will solve most of the problems. And the only way you can do that and not mess up all the way is if you go as honestly as possible, because everybody's honest experience is very different. So with Iwaju, the story we told is a very different kind of story, and anybody who's watched it, you realize a very heavy theme for our story, which is a family story. But it was well received, everybody watched it like we did it tastefully, and that's because we did it honestly. And as somebody telling an African story from Africa, there's a thing where, almost again in the whole re-education bit, where there's two sides of the coin, where the people who fantasize it, where it's like, oh, there's all these great things, or there's poverty porn, if I'm to call it that, where it's all like destructive. And telling Iwaju, we kind of told the truth of that place there. We called the thing A Love Letter to Lagos, Nigeria. And the interesting thing happened where even if we covered a lot of tough topics, which most people in Nigeria would not want, for example, the world to kind of shut out or be like, it's that. They enjoyed it because we discussed it in a way that's real. And not only that, this is a bit that surprised me. One of the humbling things I found was, I have a niece, I'll give her a real life story. So I have a friend of mine, and also I have a niece too. And they watched it, and before this, when they'll tell the daughter they're going back to Africa for a bit, she looked at it as punishment. She was like, oh, the internet is not that good, etc., etc. But after watching Iwaju, she was like, I want to go to Lagos, Nigeria. Now, I don't see why somebody could see, I'll give you a bit of spoiler, a kidnapping story and be like, I want to go to that place. But if you see the truth of the whole thing, you see everything else there. In other words, art portrays something that reality can't, right? There's something that you can capture that maybe we cannot express with words, or maybe like if somebody wants to describe a place to you and that you get stuck at some point and art captures that. And I think if you tell authentic stories, that's the only chance you have of capturing that. And I think the industry can learn a lot from that.
And do we have a clip of Iwaju that we can show briefly?
From Disney Animation and the groundbreaking storytellers of Kugali.
Happy birthday, Tola. This is Oti. You want stars for a pet?
It's great.
Comes a Disney Plus limited series.
What would you say if I asked you to go to the mainland?
Set in a futuristic Nigeria.
You want to see the real Lagos?
Yes, let's go.
Welcome to Lagos, Nigeria.
Tola, your daddy has done well for himself.
This is how to fish in large rivers. Oti, where's my daughter? She's your responsibility. Find her.
Be careful, oh. Some of these people are actually dangerous.
I laugh in the face of danger.
I didn't hear you laugh, oh.
Tola, I got you now.
Go! Actually, kind of cute. I take that back.
Well, there we go. So, look, I'm going to move on to Hassan, and I want to bring you back in, and I want to ask you about what the importance of lived experience is during the production process. You've been involved in the making of so many things, but the one that sticks in my head is The Swimmers, and your ability to bring in people with lived experience into the room.
Thank you very much. I think I echo the words of the panelists on previous panels who all talked about how incredibly rich it is to have people with lived experience, to offer their insights, and it only helps the filmmakers. It roots your story in reality, it makes it authentic, it makes it believable. But involving people, shouldn't happen in the production, it should happen in the creation of the show. Because so many times I get sent scripts of something around displacement, and the people say, oh, do you want to come for like 3 days? We'll give you a 3-day rate, and just make sure it's all good. I think that's just I think again, I'm very cynical, and I think that's not the way you do it. Now, the whole sort of involving people with lived experience is something that we should also discuss amongst ourselves. And I want to give specific examples, right? So I talk about displacement and migration, which is the most pressing issue of our times. In Britain, migration and the Channel and Stop the Boats is on every ballot of every vote. Every politician talks about it. And migrants in England are the most dehumanized people in this country, one of the most. Now, the reason why is because the rhetoric is demonizing. You had previous Home Secretaries calling it an invasion. So basically linking people to an invading army. You have the word illegal migrants. You've all heard the word illegal migrant. Illegal migrants is not a thing. There's no such thing as an illegal migrant. Now, the stories then that we hear in the press, yesterday, for example, sadly, 5 people died crossing the Channel. I got asked to go on the BBC to go and talk about it. I said, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about it. But then that's it. The story will get shared. We'll talk about it for a day. People died. They said 5 people died. We might, the Guardian will send someone to Calais to interview their friends, and that's it. And then we move on to the next story. Now, we come to the responsibility of the entertainment industry. The entertainment industry has a massive responsibility when it comes to this. And the responsibility is to do this justice by sort of who is telling the story when it's around displacement. Not a single film or show made about migrants, whether it's a comedy or a drama or a documentary, was either written or directed by someone who has an experience with displacement in Britain. I'm going to give you the most recent example, The Old Oak. I'm a big admirer of Ken Loach. I think he's an incredible filmmaker, but that was his worst rated film. Why? Because it had a white director and a white writer. We have our friend here from the Arab Film Club. How many Arab screenwriters do we have in England? Like?
About 150.
Great, 150. No one got the call to come on board as a co-writer, although you have your protagonist, a Syrian woman. Now, as a result, the representation, honestly, when you watch shows about migrants, bar the ones I worked on, of course. I'm not, mark my word, listen, to go and honestly, I'm not just, this is not just sound bites I'm giving you. It's one of the two. They're either superheroes or victims, and nothing in the middle. They're not human. It's either superheroes, like the one I worked on, Swimmers, which, again, if I was a director or the writer, I wouldn't write it like that. Or they're victims. They are like sort of sads and like, you talked about poverty porn, it's trauma porn, it's, it's PTSD, you're riddled with that. So as a British viewer, you're watching that and you're like, that is boring. Or like, sort of like, it's a bit, I don't understand, it's not relatable, so, which makes it annoying. Now, I described the situation a lot. Now, let me tell you about actions. What am I doing? And sadly, the chair of BAFTA has left, but she would have loved this plug. But what I've also done in collaboration with BAFTA and what I'm doing on my current production. Now, the film that I'm writing right now, no one, in these stories, no one wants to talk about economic migrants. Like people who, yeah, I'm aware of the time, but people are going to love this, trust me. He's like, look. We don't tell stories about people who are actually in England, not because they're fleeing bombs or they're fleeing anything. They're here because they want a better life. Any of us, if we were born in Syria, or sorry, I'll choose, like Egypt, maybe in the south of Egypt, you want to go and find a better job. So I'm telling that story. And he's undocumented and happens to be an economic migrant. Now, we got Counterpoints Art on board. And my commissioners at BBC Film are incredible. Shout out to Kristen Irving and Anu Henriquez. We budgeted for an impact producer and a mental health sort of officer. And we got 10 people with lived experience of being undocumented in a room, paid and fed and all of that. And we had this incredible session about, they just gave us their stories. They were like, yeah, amazing. I would like to talk about that. And I can't tell you how valuable I found that while I'm writing the script. So I wanted to share this, put it out, put it to the room because everyone's going to find it very. So bring people on board from day one. Don't bring them from day 10. And in terms of the BAFTA collaboration, we did this incredible collaboration. BAFTA provided their space, and they brought their heads of departments and actors, and we got, with Choose Love and other organizations, 12 asylum seekers who all want to be filmmakers. We all wrote a scene together at BAFTA. We all shot it together at BAFTA, and we edited together at BAFTA. And it's all, now they can use it on their show reels, and when you're an asylum seeker, it's boring being an asylum seeker. So that, I got them excited. So I'm going to play that when we're done.
But I'm going to ask you, whilst you're setting that up, if I can ask Ruby the final question. If you want to set up your clip.
I'm going to set up. I'm going to set up the show. Yeah.
Okay. Ruby, the final question. We have 20 seconds on the clock. How open are the BBC with its impartiality guidelines to work with campaign groups and charities to raise awareness of social issues?
100% open. I mean, really, it's the purpose of public service television, isn't it? But in entertainment, it's about the entertainment first, and the subtext is the social issue, because that's the biggest reach. All I care about is reaching the people that it matters and who it will resonate with. We've talked a lot about diverse, authentic storytelling. My next step, really, I've spent the bulk of my career, and I've got friends here who we've been the only one for years, and that's changing, but it's incremental. And, some of us that were here, we've all worked on Asian programming unit, or this unit, or that unit, or some diverse programming that went out at 2 a.m., and that's how we found our people. What I want to do is get to a place where we're ring-fencing funds for diverse programming. That's really what I want. It's like deeds, not words. And really, you can do as many schemes as possible, but it's really creating effective action. Did that answer your question?
That very much did. I want to thank such a wonderful panel. You can ask them questions over lunch, I'm sure. We're going to end with a clip from Hassan.
Yeah, but if you don't mind, all go back to your seats because the subtitles are below.
Okay.
So if you don't mind,
we can do that, but give everyone a round of applause.
Clap for them. Thank you, guys. Go to your seats. Very kind. Absolutely phenomenal. Great. Okay, so inshallah it's going to work because this was like a last-minute thing. And this is a pitch for a show called Sarabia, and Sarabia is an Arab Wakanda. And then I'm going to play it.
شو خلعت لك بطن مشاوي يا زلمه ما كان في شيء مش موجوده كباب بالشقف شيش طاووق الكليه فشه باذنجان كنت حنفجر عم بقول لك مش معقول
طب جوعان انا شو رايك نخلص من هذا الزلمه عشان ناكل
يلا صح ماشي توبي اسأله ليش ترك بريطانيا ها؟
Hey. Why did you leave your country?
Britain has become a failed state. I'm pleading with your humanity. I'm in desperation. Please grant me asylum. I'm in fear for my life.
دولة فاشلة، إنسانية، كل هالأمور اللي بتعرف.
مر من فرنسا، اسأله ليش ما ضل هونيك.
Why didn't you stay in France?
I don't know anyone in France. I have an aunt here in this country. I could stay with her.
والله في أكل طيبة بفرنسا.
إيه والله. What did he say?
كرواسان، كريم بروليه.
What? I don't.
خلاص حيسمع منا إن شاء الله.
You will hear from us in the coming month.
لك شو؟ في محل قريبة.
Right. Amazing. If you're a commissioning editor, I have a finished deck for this. Come and talk to me. Thank you very much. Now, I'll hand it back to you. Yeah. It's actually ready. We've written it. We've had a deck, and the asylum seekers who helped us make it are going to be in the process. There's going to be an educational part to this where they, learn screenwriting as we write, as we go along, and it's going to be, gags like that. It's hilarious. Right.
Really, best of luck with it.
Thanks
so much for showing us some of it. And